Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of Mafia Definitive Edition. So we're continuing where we left off. This chapter is going to be kind of short. It is the shortest chapter in the game. But I'll talk a little bit of history on it, and I don't want to do the next chapter after that because it's the ending. I want to keep this chapter in one separate part so I can talk a little bit more about it. But I'll also have the ending tomorrow. But I hope that you guys like the cosplay, Great Depression bank robber cosplay. But anyways, let's continue here from where we left off, moonlighting. And if you guys enjoy this series, drop a like. It does help the series out a lot.
Plan stays the same.
Right. I take care of the crowd, you handle the manager. Threats don't work, do what you gotta do. Keeps the vault keys on him.
See a teller sounds the alarm. How long do we get?
5 minutes, maybe more, before the cops show.
What if it all goes to hell?
I'm not fucking around, Tom. You hear gunshots down at the vault? Don't come up. It's the money, or nothing at all. You doing this?
We're doing this.
Get the fuck down! Not you, ladies. Stay where we can see your pretty faces. Anybody moves, I'll pop them.
Get the manager! I need you all to stay on the ground!
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit of history on this part. I wanted to talk... This mission is heavily inspired by John Dillinger's crime spree. So, John Dillinger, he is the most famous American bank robber in history. He robbed between 10 to 12 banks between 1933 and 1934. He's also probably the most famous German-American gangster in American history. He wasn't really in the mafia. It was just him and his gang that would rob banks. But anyways, about John Dillinger, his backstory, he started out as a small-time hood, a small-time gangster that was robbing stores, and him and his friend had robbed a grocery store in 1924. Now, when the grocer refused to give the money, what happened was Dillinger hit the grocer with a blunt object. Didn't kill him, but hit him. Now, what happened is they both got caught, him and his buddy. And Dillinger was told in court that if you plead guilty, the courts will have mercy on you, you'll get a lenient sentence. Now, his friend hired a really good lawyer, and his friend got 1 year probation. What that basically means is that he gets out, he's not in prison. If he does anything, you know, within that 1 year, he immediately gets sent to prison. But John Dillinger, on the other hand, he pled guilty, told that he would get mercy, and he got over 10 years in prison. And what that basically did was, that turned a small-time hood into a hardened criminal. And he had, like, a deep hatred for the justice system after that. He felt that he was, wrong. He felt that he did not get a fair sentence compared to his friend. And he met a lot of really other dangerous people in prison. He ended up forming his gang. 1933, 9 years later, he got out. He didn't serve the full 10 years. He got out 1 year earlier. He ended up, him and his buddies robbed a bunch of banks across the Midwest. They robbed banks in Chicago, and they robbed banks as far as South Dakota, Ohio, Indiana, a lot of places. Now, about John Dillinger, there's a lot of controversy around him, because John Dillinger is probably the most, popular bank robber in history. And the reason for that is because people just see him as, a man of the people. They see him as, a Robin Hood that was, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. But it's not really true. John Dillinger never gave any of the money that he stole to poor people. He never did. It was all for his, own, luxury. He was only spending money on himself. It wasn't like he was robbing banks and helping poor people. That's a false myth that's been, circulated around. The reason that this myth started, that he was like a man of the people, is because he was a very charismatic person. He knew how to talk to people, and he never really hurt any hostages. He never really abused any hostages. He never killed any hostages. I found no proof of him ever killing a civilian. There's no record of him ever killing a civilian. So, and when he would go into banks, the first thing that he and his guys would oftentimes say is he would say that, "We're here for the bank's money, not your money." That's what he would always say. And that line actually made it into the movie Heat. So in the movie Heat, 1990s bank robber movie, when Robert De Niro is actually robbing the bank, he says, "We're here for the bank's money, not your money. Your money's insured by the federal government." That extra line, "Your money's insured by the federal government," Dillinger never said that. But he did say the first part where he said that, "We're here for the bank's money, not your money." And hostages hearing this and then talking to the media, this basically started blowing up, and he became like a legend, very popular figure. And you have to also understand, this happened during the Great Depression. And when this happened during the Great Depression, let me take the bandana off, it's getting a little difficult to talk. But during the Great Depression, when this was happening, people really hated banks, because people lost all of their money because of banks. This is, one of the worst economic times in American history. And so banks were foreclosing on people. Banks were taking people's homes, and you had this guy that was never, hurting any hostages, going into banks, robbing them, taking all of their money. And so basically people saw him as like, this hero that was fighting against the system. But here's the thing about it. When Dillinger was actually hurting poor people by robbing these banks, the reason that he was hurting poor people, a lot of times he would rob small town banks. And the reason for that is because he knew that the police response time in the Midwest and a lot of these smaller cities and smaller towns would not be that big. The largest, bank he robbed was in Chicago, but a lot of times he would rob small town, small city banks in the Midwest. He knew the police response wouldn't be that big, that there wouldn't be that much security in these small banks, and it was the perfect places to hit. And he was right a lot of times. But here's the thing. When Dillinger started his bank robbery spree in 1933, FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Company, I think that's what it's called, that was not passed yet. And that was passed by Roosevelt. Now, what FDIC still exists today, it's a great system, and what FDIC basically is that if let's say that your bank collapses, like tomorrow, right? Your bank just runs out of money, like the bank just falls apart, the bank just loses their business, everything like that. The federal government will insure up to $250,000 of your money. So if your bank closes tomorrow, they go out of business, you don't have to panic, because the federal government will compensate you up to $250,000 of that money. And most people don't have more than $250,000 in the bank. So it works. And people, it was a good system because it gives people, more hope into opening up savings accounts, more hope to putting away their money in banks. And as much as I dislike banks, it is safer to actually keep your money in banks instead of keeping all the cash at home, because then, somebody could break into your house or get lost, or, a number of things can happen. Relative could steal it. In banks, it would be relatively more safe, and with the federal government now, compensating up to $250,000, it was, generally a good system. But when Dillinger started his crime spree in 1933, that system still did not exist. So that means that, let's say that Dillinger robs a small-town bank with his guys, right? They go in the bank, they steal all the bank's money, the bank collapses, they go out of business. Everybody that had their money in that bank is now broke. They lost all of their money. The government would not compensate you, the bank would not compensate you, bank's out of business, nothing. It's gone. So he was hurting poor people at the time when he was robbing these banks. People lost all their money because of that, but that's not really what the media was saying. What he did start his final crime spree in 1934, that FDIC did exist at that point, so people were being compensated for the money he stole from these banks, but before that, not really. And also, there's this big urban legend about John Dillinger. It's like a really false legend, and people say that he went into one of the banks, and he went into the offices, and he demanded, like, the mortgage records of, like, people that were being foreclosed on, and he just burned and destroyed all the mortgage records, so that the bank wouldn't know who owed them money, and this, like, apparently saved so many people, and they were able to keep their homes. And this was spread around the media. The media would, like, write stories about this, saying that this happened, and he saved people from losing their homes. That never happened. There is no proof. I found no proof of that. I tried to research that so much. There is no proof that happened. That was just an urban legend. And it was probably started by somebody that, saw, like, one of the reporters that was basically practicing yellow journalism, where they heavily exaggerate the media, saying, oh, he's sticking it to the system, the banks, are stealing from the poor, and, and he went into one of these offices and destroyed all the mortgage records. It's nonsense. And I will tell you, how I know that this is nonsense also? Because do you know what the most important thing for a bank robber is? The most important thing? Time. Time is the most important thing for a bank robber. For a bank robber to be successful, they have to get in and get out very quickly. Very, very, very quickly. Because they could get surrounded really quick and the situation could go bad. So getting into that bank, robbing it, getting out really quickly in a timely manner, that is the most important thing for a bank robber. So I highly doubt that Dillinger would, like, you know, take the time and that bank robbery to basically go into, like, you know, the offices, look for mortgage records. He's not there for that. He's there to rob the bank's money. So, like, when people are saying he went into the bank to, like, destroy mortgage records, no, that didn't happen. It was nonsense. But now here's the thing. Was John Dillinger an evil person? No, I wouldn't say that he was an evil person. He wasn't a good person, though. He was a bad person. I think most of us can agree on that, but I wouldn't say he was an evil person. He never really, you know, hurt or abused any hostages, but he did do some bad things, though. You know, one bad thing that he did do is, what happened, some of the bank robberies where the police responded quicker than he believed, what him and his guys did was they actually used hostages as human shields. So they would actually march them out of the bank and just hold them with human shields as they were walking out of the bank. And the police, you know, were not trained at that time to deal with, like, you know, these large hostage situations. And Dillinger had a pretty big, you know, gang, number of guys. And a lot of times they outnumbered the police that actually responded to this situation. And the gang was actually more heavily armed than the police. The police had like 38 revolvers most of the time, where Dillinger's gang were carrying Tommy guns, you know, Thompsons. So they were heavily outnumbered and they were kept using hostages. And what happened was, when Dillinger and his gang actually got into cars, they didn't just let the hostages go. What they would do is they would force the hostages to actually stand on that little step on the car, so like that little step on the side of the car. They would force the hostages to stand on that side of the car while they would have to point like a handgun at them through the window while they were driving away. And that was so that the police would not pursue them or shoot them when there's a hostage, you know, on the side of the car. And on top of that, what they would also do is they would put the hostages right in between them. So they would literally force the hostage into the back of the car, and they would basically have the hostage sit in the middle, and then you have one of his gangsters sit on the left side and one of his gangsters sit on the right side and sit in between the hostages. And the police wouldn't shoot because there's hostages in the car. It was a genius tactic. It worked because the police rarely fired shots at them because of this. It worked, but it was cruel. It was horrible. It was not a, you know, it was a bad thing to do. You know, he was using people as human shields. So that's something that the media doesn't really talking about. They talked about how he was the man of the people. He was a good man. That he had, you know, he was robbing from the banks, giving to the poor, but a lot of that isn't true. He was just robbing for himself, for his own riches, and he did, you know, use hostages as shields. No hostage I found died because of this, but he did put them at risk. If a hostage died during this, it would be as a result of him. So he didn't really have a problem there, you know, putting people in harm's way in that regard. However, though, when he did kidnap those hostages and he drove off with them, he never executed them. He never killed any of them. He would a lot of times drive a few miles away from the bank, and then he would just release them on some, like, back road. So he was not known for his brutality. He wasn't a cruel person. He never really abused the hostages, but yes, he did use the hostages as shields. Now, did John Dillinger murder anybody? There is a record of him actually supposedly killing a single police officer. This happened during a Chicago bank robbery, and the police officer was William O'Malley, and he responded to the bank robbery, and he got shot a few times in the chest with a .45. Now, Dillinger was actually arrested for this. He was arrested and charged with this murder, but it was never proven that he was the one who actually killed that police officer. So while the police officer did get murdered by a bank robber, died at the scene, it was never really proven that he did it. And while Dillinger was actually in jail, awaiting that, what happened was he actually took a broom, and he snapped off the wooden handle from the broom, and he actually carved it into a wooden pistol. So Dillinger was a very smart man. This was not a dumb person. This was a very intelligent man. He carved the wooden broom handle into the shape of a pistol, made it look like a pistol. And then what he did was he took black shoe polish and he painted the wooden gun to make it seem like it was a real gun. And what happened was, when there was a cop walking by his jail cell, he pulled it on him. And he basically told him he smuggled a gun in, and he said to open his cell or he's going to shoot him. And the cop opened his cell, and then he took the cop's gun, and at that point he had a real gun. And what he did was he walked through the jail and held all the cops at gunpoint, and he locked all the cops in the jail cell. And then he stole a cop car, and then he drove across state lines and escaped. And then later they found out that it was a wooden pistol. And so that was like a massive embarrassment for the police, and it just shows how cunning he was, how intelligent he was. I did find a few records of him and his gang getting into shootouts with the police, and a few FBI agents died. but I wasn't able to find any concrete proof that Dillinger had personally actually killed anybody. He never killed a hostage. I'm not defending him, I'm not saying he was a good person. The only thing I'm saying is that Dillinger was not like a stone cold killer like some of these other gangsters. Now, a lot of Dillinger's bad reputation, it comes from being associated with this guy called Babyface Nelson. And Babyface Nelson, he wasn't really a member of the gang. He was more like an on and off associate. He did help with bank robberies. He was a very good for muscle during these robberies, but Nelson was a very cruel man, and he was also a brutal person. And Nelson was a stone-cold killer. Dillinger didn't really like him, but used him a lot of times for the muscle during those bank robberies. So that's where he gets that bad reputation, is that one of his guys was a really bad person, like really much worse than him. But about John Dillinger, John Dillinger, he was how he ended up dying. He died very similar to the movie Public Enemy. So if anybody's seen Public Enemies, that's very similar to how he died. He was laying low in Chicago. He had a false name in Chicago, and Dillinger was actually considering plastic surgery to actually change his face, change his appearance, that the police would not, stop looking for him. And I think that he actually burned off his fingerprints also so that the police could not identify him. I think he did that as well. So this was not a stupid man. This was a very smart man. But he was wearing a disguise, hat, glasses, and he met this woman in Chicago that he fell in love with. And the woman that he fell in love with in Chicago, she lived in this boarding house. And the boarding house was also used as a brothel. And the woman who actually used the boarding house as a brothel, Anna Sage, she was an immigrant from Romania. Now, she ended up getting arrested, and she faced deportation for running this brothel house. And what happened is she told the FBI, I know Dillinger, he's dating one of my girls. I'll give you information. I'll tell you where he's gonna be. You don't deport me in exchange for that. And so she basically betrayed and backstabbed Dillinger. And what happened was the police were waiting for him coming out of the theater. And then when he was walking down the street with his girlfriend, the police ended up drawing a bunch of handguns. And then Dillinger saw them for a moment, and then he tried to reach into his pocket, and then they just gunned him down, and they killed him. They shot him in the head. Now, the thing about Dillinger, the police were going to kill him. That was not going to be an arrest. Now, did Dillinger possibly try to reach for his gun? Most likely. But the thing is, that was a kill mission. That was not going to be an arrest mission. They were not going to arrest him. There was going to be a kill mission. That's specifically what that was going to be. And the reason for that is because Dillinger was such a famous bank robber. His wanted poster was all over the country. He was labeled Public Enemy #1 by the FBI. That's why the movie is called Public Enemies. They were going to kill him. They were not planning on arresting him. They were pretty much going to kill him. The FBI denied this. They said they were going to try and arrest him, but it's pretty obvious that they were planning on killing him. The way that they shot him, the way they pointed those guns at him, literally when they were coming up behind him, it was an execution. And I wouldn't be surprised if they made up the story that he tried to draw the gun on them. But it was pretty much a message towards other criminals that this is what happened. Now, if we compare John Dillinger, for example, if we compare him to Bonnie and Clyde. Now, Bonnie and Clyde are two other famous, gangsters during the Great Depression. They were a couple. But they had a gang also, but they were known as, being together all the time and robbing places. Now, Dillinger would rob banks, but Bonnie and Clyde pretty much robbed everything. Stores, banks, anything that they could find, they would rob. Now, about Bonnie and Clyde. Dillinger, like I said, Dillinger was not a good man. He was a bad person. But Bonnie and Clyde were evil. That's the difference. How were Bonnie and Clyde evil, but Dillinger was a bad person? Dillinger never engaged in brutality. Like, he never, brutalized civilians, never murdered civilians. At most, they got into shootouts with cops, but that's because the cops tried to stop them. So I'm not saying it was a good thing, but it was less worse than just, murdering civilians, for example. Now, Bonnie and Clyde, they actually killed 9 police officers, 9 cops, and murdered 4 civilians. And what Bonnie and Clyde were known for, Clyde was known for using the BAR, the Browning automatic rifle. And so they were, Bonnie and Clyde were stone cold killers. They were evil people. Like Lucia and Jason, for example, in GTA 6 are based on Bonnie and Clyde. People think of, Bonnie, when they think of Bonnie and Clyde, they think of like this romantic couple that was like robbing stores together, on this crime spree, which is true. But when you think of Bonnie and Clyde, you don't typically think of cold-blooded killers. They are, stone cold, cold-blooded murderers. They were way worse than John Dillinger. So I would say Bonnie and Clyde were evil, where Dillinger was just a bad man. There's a difference. There's a difference between being bad and being evil, and that's a perfect example. Like I said, Dillinger really has no record of killing any civilians, but Bonnie and Clyde killed numerous civilians. and they killed numerous cops as well. And Bonnie and Clyde, how they met their end is that they basically got cornered by the police. I think it was in Iowa, and they were coming down the road, and the police just laid an ambush, and the police just unloaded into their car. Like, it was just sprayed into them, just firing squad. Just their car got shut up. You can actually see their car. I think it's actually in Prim in Nevada today, where you can find their shut up car. I think it's in a casino or a hotel. But a lot of people said that was murder, what happened to Bonnie and Clyde, and maybe you could make the argument that the police were planning on killing them. They pretty much were. It wasn't going to be an arrest mission at the same time, too. But about Bonnie and Clyde is, Bonnie and Clyde had killed 9 cops and 4 civilians. These were stone-cold killers. The police at that time were not taking any chances. They were, and they probably knew a lot of the cops. A lot of the cops that died were probably their friends. And so the police were out to get them, and they were not taking any chances. They saw them down that road. They're not getting away again. They're not gonna, if they get away again, they're gonna kill more people. And so that was basically it. The police were planning on killing Bonnie and Clyde, and they did that. And Bonnie and Clyde deserved that. You know, they deserved that, where, you know, they deserved to get shut up like that. You know, they were just evil people. Dillinger, I don't think Dillinger really deserved what he got. I think Dillinger should have been arrested, but I think that, like, you know, coming up behind him and, like, shooting him, like, on the side of the head, like how they killed him, I think that was murder. I don't think that was necessary. I think they could have caught him in a better way. I wanted to also talk about one other thing. Now, any of my viewers, if you are into firearms, if you're into, for example, gun rights, you know, the NFA, the National Firearms, you know, Act, that was actually passed because of John Dillinger and because of John Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde. It was a combination of both of them. And Bonnie and Clyde and John Dillinger were known for using automatic weapons. John Dillinger was known for using the Tommy gun. The Tommy gun was his, you know, go-to gun. Automatic, you know, Thompson with a round drum, 50-round magazine on it. The Bonnie and Clyde were known for the bar, the Browning automatic rifle. So that's what Clyde used, is he used the bar. And the bar was a way more powerful weapon than the Tommy gun. The Tommy gun had a faster fire rate and a larger magazine, but the bar had way more range, and it was fired 30-06, the same bullet that the M1 Garand fires in. So just think about that how much damage that thing can do. But that's what Clyde used a lot of times in his shootouts. He killed a lot of people with the bar. But now here's the thing. The government, when they pass the NFA, what the NFA basically does is the NFA restricts automatic weapons. So you're not allowed to own automatic weapons. You can own an automatic weapon, but there is a long procedure for this. You need a special license for this. You need to register with the ATF. You need to pay a tax stamp. It also, like, regulated, like, SBR, short-barreled rifles. It's a law that still exists today. A lot of gun owners hate it. But here's the thing. Here's what the government isn't going to tell you. The government actually lied about the reason for the NFA being passed. Because the government, what they were doing is they were shifting the blame onto civilians. What the government was doing is they were saying, oh, it's the fault of the civilians. You know, civilian gun shops sold Bonnie and Clyde, and they sold John Dillinger these guns, and it was because of gun shops that they caused this violence. But here's the reality. Bonnie and Clyde and John Dillinger actually did not get their weapons from gun shops. Now, it is true in the 1930s that you could actually buy a fully automatic Tommy gun. It was actually a popular gun. It was very thousands of dollars, so only really people who had a lot of money could actually buy it. But yes, you could actually buy them through a catalog. You could get a mail order. You could go to a gun store and you could, you could purchase them. That was true. But you could not purchase a bar. A Browning automatic rifle, the bar that Clyde had, you could not purchase that in a store in the 1930s. In the 40s, after World War II, there was a semi-automatic version of the bar created because it was a popular rifle during World War II, and a lot of soldiers wanted to own it after the wars for civilian uses. But here's the thing. So you're probably wondering, if Bonnie and Clyde and John Dillinger did not get their guns from the gun stores, where did they actually get their guns from? You know where they got their guns from? They stole them. John Dillinger, for his gang, they robbed 2 police stations. 2 police stations, and in those 2 police stations that they robbed, they went into the armory. And the thing about this is, it's genius when you think about it, because the police stations that John Dillinger and his gang robbed, they came in with handguns, but the police were not prepared for that, because remember what I said, Dillinger robbed small towns in the Midwest, and if he robbed like a small town in the Midwest, a small town's police station, maybe like 4 or 5 guys at most that they'll have, so he would come in late at night, when most officers are home, maybe there's like 1 or 2 officers at the station, and him and his gang would come in at night because less visibility, there's less cops working, they would come into the police station, and then they would rob the armory. And the armory of the station had Tommy guns in them. Now, most police officers carry .38 revolvers, but it's not like today. Today, today, in a lot of cops, what they will do is they will carry like an AR-15 in the trunk of their car, and then they'll have their sidearm on them, so they'll have an AR-15 in the trunk in case they need extra firepower. But back then, cops did not carry like the Tommy gun in the trunks of the car. The Tommy gun would oftentimes be in the armories, and that's how they got access to those Tommy guns. That's how they got them. Now, why didn't Dillinger? If Dillinger had so much money from these bank robberies, why didn't he just go and purchase a Tommy gun? The reason for he never purchased a Tommy gun in the gun shops is because every single gun shop in the country would have his wanted poster up. He was like literally the most wanted bank robber in America. So every single place would have his a poster up. So they didn't want to attract attention or anything like that. So that's why they didn't go to gun shops specifically. So the reason that Dillinger got his, Tommy guns was because of government incompetence. That's why he stole it from the police. He didn't steal it. He didn't buy it at a gun shop. But that's what the government said. The government lied and said, oh, he bought it at a gun shop. But that's not true. He actually stole it from the police. And as for Clyde, from Bonnie and Clyde, remember how I said that Clyde used the bar, the Browning automatic rifle? Well, you couldn't buy that in a store. But where did Clyde and Bonnie get that? You know where they got it? They robbed a National Guard depot. That's where they got the bar from. And they got so much ammunition. They even got grenades. So literally that's where Bonnie and Clyde got their weapons. While Dillinger robbed two police stations, Bonnie and Clyde robbed the National Guard depot. Same thing. At night, they came in, there was less soldiers on duty, and then they went into the armory, and then they stole those Tommy guns, bars, anything that the military, could have. So Bonnie and Clyde had even more heavy firepower than John Dillinger. So these weapons, like the bar, the Tommy gun that were used, these weapons were not purchased in gun shops. These weapons were actually stolen, and the government didn't want to admit to that. The government didn't want to admit that it was their incompetence that these criminals had gotten these weapons. And so basically, what happened is they instead blamed it on civilians. They said, "Oh, it's the fault of civilians because civilians have access to these high-powered weapons." But in reality, it wasn't the fault of gun owners. It wasn't the fault of law-abiding gun owners. It was the fault of the police being incompetent and also the National Guard being incompetent at the same time too. How does a few guys like Bonnie and Clyde managed to break into a National Guard depot, handguns, and managed to rob them of machine guns? Like, how did that even happen? What were the National Guard soldiers doing at that depot? So it was really the government's fault. It was not the it was not the fault of gun owners, but the government isn't going to tell you that, and they use that as an excuse to basically say, oh, it's not our fault, it's the civilians' fault, and then that's basically the backstory and how the NFA was passed. So yeah, so if you don't like the NFA, if you're a gun owner, if you're a big person on gun rights, and you don't like the NFA, you think that the NFA is a stupid law, well, now you even know more about it. Now you know that it's even a bit more of a stupid law, because all it did was it punished law-abiding gun owners, and the criminals who used those guns that the NFA was passed for didn't even get the guns legally. They stole them from the government, the police, and the National Guard. But anyways, let's continue here. Let's do this bank robbery. I know a lot of you guys want to watch this. There's going to be a lot of fun here.
Movement, people start getting shot. We all want everyone to get to go home and hug their kids tonight, right? No heroes. Not today. No kidding around. You saw that?
Oh, and how I know that this mission is based on Public Enemies is because if you look at the cover art of the movie, it's extremely similar to the outfit that Tommy is actually wearing with the trench coat.
When I get nervous, my trigger finger gets shaky. Once the MA associate have the money, you'll be free. Not long to go.
Shit. With me. Down to the vault.
I'll do whatever you say. No one needs to get hurt. This make you feel big? Beating on a little guy?
It's making me feel rich, and the little guy gets to walk away if he doesn't do anything stupid.
You know how ironic this is when the banker is saying that this makes you feel good robbing the little guy?
How many guards at the
But
vault?
One.
You gonna shoot?
I don't know.
If I see a gun, he gets a bullet. So you tell him to stand down. It's all on you.
this is so ironic. This is a mafia bank, what this is. This is a bank that all these criminals have laundered their money in, and the bank knows about it. It's a bank that's been carrying millions of dollars of blood money.
Everything okay?
Manager here is being good and cooperative. We're all doing what we're told, aren't we, buddy? Keep moving.
You won't get away with this. Your sword never do.
You just worry about yourself.
You want to see your daughter graduate from high school? You keep your hands where I can see them and tell your guard to do the same.
You want to see your daughter graduate high school. So that's the thing is, Tommy is a Tommy's being pretty scary here. I like his change way more in Definitive Edition than the original.
Remember, when we get to your guard, you tell him to drop his gun. You got that? Listen to me very carefully. I need you to put down your... Sick him, boys! Shoot him! Got him!
He lied about the amount of guards. He said that there was only one.
Vault keys on the table. No one else has to die. I don't have to die.
That was it. He was warned. He was warned about it. Don't feel bad for that guy. That guy was a, cooperating with some of these gangsters for so long. That manager was corrupt. Nothing else back here, then.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
Wake him on it. Damn it. The cops are here.
Let's go. Get the money. It's time to go.
Holy shit. Surrender. Drop the money. Nowhere to run, boys. Eyes on that bastard.
And that cop with the Tommy gun is being a massive threat right now. More cops in the vault now, okay. Okay, got one.
Get to his side.
One down.
I've got him.
I wish that this bank robbery had more planning to it, because in the original you actually went to the bank and actually scoped it out before the robbery.
Where?
Anywhere, just lose the cops! They got a new guy giving backup! I clipped him! Behind you!
Officers reporting he's now in Holbrook. Officers in Holbrook. We've lost sight of them. Stay on patrol. Officers have seen him. Now in pursuit. Officers in Holbrook. We've lost sight of them. Stay on patrol.
Need to find like an alley or something. Oh yeah, this is right near Salieri's warehouse, too.
All officers, search is called off.
Where now?
A Palermo club.
Sam's Club.
Hey, it's empty right now. But you don't know, can't hurt him. We're almost there, Tom. We've almost done it.
It's still almost, Paulie. We'll only have done it once my heart stops trying to beat outside my chest.
We did it! I can't believe we fucking did it! We're loaded! We're loaded!
Yeah,
For all time's sake.
sure. We gotta go. I'll see you tomorrow.
Unless I'm halfway to Hawaii. Oh, come on. I'm kidding. Hey, I couldn't have done this without you. I know that. Go home, celebrate with Sarah, come by my place in the morning, we'll split up the dough.
Yeah, okay. Good luck.
See you around, pal.
Okay, yeah, this is gonna be the final chapter here now. Okay, so I'll have the final part out for you guys tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this part. If you did, drop a like, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.